All right, here we are. MMA Weeklies, the lowdown. I'm Scott Peterson, and I got my cohort in crime, Jake Hatton. Today we got news, another breaking news. It always seems to come, just like summer, spring, and fall.
Say it isn't so.
Yeah, ex-UFC champ Nico Montano among 4 fighters suspended 6 months by USADA. Former UFC women's flyweight champion Nico Montano is one of 4 fighters facing a 6-month suspension from USADA for violating UFC's anti-doping policy. Besides Nico, Sean O'Malley, Augusto Mendez, and Marvin Vettori, all sentenced positive for trace elements of the banned substance Austrian, which was consistent with supplement contamination. And so let's go over to USADA's website here, and we are showing there to get a little bit of a, well, before we go into Austrian, just to let you know, all of these were out of competition drug tests where these were positive tests were found. Augusto Mendez was March 7th of last year. Marvin Vettori, his was on August 24th of 2018, last year. Sean O'Malley, September 5th of last year. And Nico Montano's out of competition test was on October 25th. Now, all of them were given 6-month suspensions, lighter suspensions because of the contamination contamination of the products taken, and Nico's is the only one that still has to serve out part of her 6-month suspension, and I believe it's will be up in May. So, Jake, when you see something like this come up with the fighters, with this happening, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Well, it's tough, and I hate to speculate here before we really know the facts. But I mean, everybody's looking for a competitive advantage. I mean, these fighters are making quite a bit of money, and it's their career. So everybody's looking to get ahead. So I hate to say they were cheating when, I mean,
well, wait. The USADA did say this was, that they weren't contaminated supplements. So I don't want to be saying anybody was cheating when USADA has done an investigation. But when you see this, is that the first thing that comes to your mind? Is that cheating? Naturally, you go to that.
I think you do, and it's sad because, I mean, every day I get up and I take my protein powder out and I take a scoop of it and I drink it, and I work for a big supplement company, and I'll tell you, it's not the cleanest world out there. There's no real FDA regulations, I believe, to this date. So, I mean, it's hard to tell if they're really doing something wrong, if all 4 of them found something and they're looking for an advantage and they're masking it somehow and they got away with it, which I don't think that's the case, or if it's just really bad luck and maybe they all took the same supplement with that product in it.
I think it's only fair, though, is that, I mean, USADA did, they ran their tests, they did their investigation, they took 6 months, and in their words, it takes a while to do it. So I think it's unfair for us to, for me, I take it on face value, because they are using science. Now people will have their own ideas on that, but they said there was trace amounts of Austrian in there, in these supplements, and I don't like going out there and saying anything otherwise, other than they actually conducted their investigation.
Well, I mean, just like Josh Barnett, though, he fought it, and I believe a couple fighters have fought it, and they won. And they've proven that it was tainted supplements. So is that fair? It's
Well, what
it's
do
really
you mean?
a tricky subject.
What do you mean? Is
Is it
that
is it
fair?
is it fair to be punished for? I guess you really need to make sure your supplement in this day and age has been tested, and you're just being extremely careful with everything you put into your body.
Well, yeah, and that's they've been talking about these things, and but like you said, the real world that we live in, you know, these supplement companies don't receive the regulations that drug companies do, and so it's kind of a wild west out there. And so yeah, in the end, the fighters, and they know that they're responsible for this, and that's why they're getting the 6 month suspension. They are getting punished, and at the same time they're saying, hey, you know, these guys, in a way, at the same time they're saying it's not their fault because of tainted supplements. So, but they're still getting punished. So, you know, cheating is a whole nother thing, which is not happening here.
It's really unfortunate that, yeah.
So one thing to go back on here, if you guys don't know what Austrian is, this is on USADA's website. Austrian is a non-specified substance in the class of anabolic agents. Anabolics, androgens, they're like testosterone, sex hormones, and prohibited at all times under the UFC anti-doping policy. Austrian is considered a SARM, a selective androgen receptor modulator, which basically, like why the bodybuilders apparently like to use it, because it's selective in that it can target muscle tissue, bone, and so there's less side effects that come from using something, a SARM like an Austrian. Not that there aren't any side effects, but there aren't as many. A lot of women, not a lot of women, definitely not the women I dated, but women who would use it like it because there's not as many side effects with the male expression of like hair, deep voice, being awesome. No, but yeah, it's this is one thing though that seems to be changing is typically, like in the past, you would hear, you know, this is the first time we've heard, and they found out about these tests. What, like, you know, this was all last year, and we're just hearing about it today.
So can the Austrian be used as a masking agent? Is the question.
Well, that I don't know. I'm not.
That would be what I'm curious to find out, because if it's used as a masking agent, a lot of fighters I know use diuretics, different things to cover up other things that they were taking. So the question is, was it really tainted?
Well, no, it's not going to be used as something to cover up because it is the substance. This is the substance they found. This is the substance that is illegal. So they find this. It's not covering anything. But yeah, this is something that bodybuilders will go for. But it's also something that they've been doing tests on for like wasting, for like people that are sick. They've been running tests on lung cancer patients to see if it helps with the wasting, the body kind of like losing its muscle, losing its bone. But from what I understand is that it, you know, they're still testing for it. There has been a fail in it too. So who knows for as far as those uses. But apparently the Austrian was, you know, as far as medical uses in the medical community, were for like helping people with cancer and things like that. But obviously, you know, somebody finds something to use as an edge in the sports, you know, especially something like apparently the SARMs, the selective androgen you know, receptor modulators, they like that because it'll like just target specific tissue. The thing I want to talk about though is what I like about this, which I think, what I hate is because I do believe that there is a problem with the supplements, and it's like it's about impossible unless, because this is the thing, these companies are doing a lot of stuff over in China, where the quality is not being watched. Vats, bins are not being washed out. So something that somebody else was doing, and then they put your product through that you're paying them pennies on the dollar to do. There's a little bit of Austrian in there or whatever. Now it taints your thing. Now some muscle, supplement companies, some of them I think you can kind of tell on some of the labels is like Raging Cajun, Androstein. They try to make names close to an actual steroid. They probably don't care, and maybe some of them do it on purpose. But I do think that there's a problem with contamination, and you put that in combination with the sensitivity of the testing now, in which they actually addressed here. Let me go back to the article here. The trace amounts of Austrian found in each of the athletes' samples was made possible by sensitive laboratory detection capabilities. However, as detection windows increase and the potential time between ingestion and detection lengthens, it has become more difficult for athletes to identify a contaminated product that may be the source of their positive test. So otherwise saying, the tests are getting so good, they're able to find smaller amounts than they were before, which allows them to detect things that have been in the body for longer, where like old tests, like say you had something in your system for 6 months, the old test might have only picked it up 3-4 months out. The new tests are so sensitive, they pick it 6 months out. Now it's like, well, what did I take 6 months ago? It's been a longer time. It's harder for, to go, geez, I'm not sure what I was taking that long ago.
Just like John Jones, they said the picograms, and I believe, I forget which one said it, but he said it's like finding a 1 grain of sand on a beach. That's how sensitive it is. It's incredible how fine the testing is.
Right, and I believe that is, yeah, it's the case. It's my brother works. He's a microbiologist. He works in the industry of protein and supplements and stuff, and they're having issues in California because the tests can pick up the heavy metals. Heavy metals are associated with some degenerative problems within the body, and so you got government making regulations. Heavy metal amounts have to be so low, but the tests are becoming so strong and picking up stuff that it's basically impossible. The food that's coming out of the ground has heavy metal amounts higher than what is being allowed by regulation. And so, because the tests are getting so good. And so it's...
soon you won't be able to eat anything.
Yeah, yeah. Soon we will be regulated out of food. No more food. Man, that would suck. Anyway, so you guys that are in the chat room have come in and tuned in. We do have a phone number. We want to hear from you, and we're going to put that up on the screen here. If I can figure out how to run my computer. 702-799-9984. 702-799-9984. You can call in. We want to hear your thoughts on it. One of the things, too, that I'd like to bring up, like I was saying, I think that this is a legit issue with the contamination. I do like how they brought this out, that the fighters, because typically they would like bring this out that they tested positive, like they would have mentioned it last year. And then they take, the fighter goes through the process in the media, and it's basically their names dragged through the mud for 6 months or for however long it takes them to figure out exactly why they tested positive. And for a fighter that legitimately didn't know that they were taking something. It was a mistake. It's yeah, it sucks for those guys. It absolutely sucks for those guys. So I like the fact that they're doing it this way, kind of like letting the system take place and not dragging the fighters' names through the mud. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think USADA finally did it right because before they were guilty, they were guilty immediately. So now at least they're doing their research beforehand, so it doesn't hurt their career. Because let's say they find out they didn't do it. You hate to be penalized for a year, lose all your sponsors, get your name dragged through the mud. It's just unfortunate.
All right, well, we got a call here. Give me a sec here. All right, you're on MMA Weeklies, The Lowdown. Who do we got?
This is Terry Pettick. I was curious about some of the drug testing policies and what's going on currently with the UFC.
All right, Terry. Well, I don't know if you're familiar with, obviously you are, with the 4 fighters that tested positive. We were just talking about, they tested positive for Austrian. It was determined that it was tainted supplements, so they received lighter sentences of 6 months. But one thing I liked is the fact that, because usually the fighters are dragged through the court of public opinion from the get-go, and while they're trying to figure out whether or not they were guilty. Now, obviously, the substance made its way into their body, so they have to pay a price. They did pay the price of 6 months. But I do like the fact that they kind of went through the process and didn't do a public humiliation of them. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. I mean, if you really look at Austrian, it gives you about 5%. So you're looking, if you're benching 400 pounds, at 5%, it's going to make you bench 420. Is it really that big of an advantage?
Well,
it doesn't help that much. I don't think a fighter would choose that. If a fighter was going to cheat, I don't think they would choose Austrian to do it. So I think it's great that they actually, were a little more open-minded. And, the other thing is, bottom line is, I work with the FDA. I do inspection and validation for pharmaceutical plants. Supplements are non-controlled. So what you put in your body, it ultimately has to be your responsibility. So you have to really either extremely trust the company that's producing it, or take a sample and get a mass spectrometer done on it, which most fighters can't afford to do.
Oh yeah,
it's a catch-22. But we all want results. We all want to look great. We all want to feel great. So we want to buy supplements. So supplement companies are then adding things that maybe are in a gray area.
Right.
It's a slippery slope.
Well, and I think it's unfair for people. The athletes put their bodies through way more stress than the average person. So they've got to give themselves and their body the fuel, the recovery that it needs. So there's nothing wrong for going, it's like food. Food's a drug too. There's nothing wrong with trying to heal your body. And as long as they're not putting something in there that they know that's knowingly bad and has like the Austrian in it, yeah, it's just a sad affair. And so you say that there's not much regulation in the supplement industry.
Zero regulation. There is zero regulation on supplements. Now, supplement companies have the choice of calling U.S. Pharmacopoeia and getting a USDA stamp, which they have to pay to do that.
Right.
And what USDA does, come in, they inspect the facility, and they do random sampling of the product. And once they believe that the product is exactly what's on the label, then they give you the USDA stamp of approval.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think that the regular guy, the regular gym rat or girl, rat guy, gym, Do you think that they care about that approval? I don't think there's a profit motive for supplement companies to do that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
In fact,
In
they're.
fact, I don't know if you're familiar. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Rich Gaspari XP scandal.
I'm not.
Yep, I am.
Oh, Jake is.
Rich Gaspari was a very famous bodybuilder in the 90s. Him and Lee Haney competed for Mr. Olympia, like neck and neck several times. He has a supplement line, which is actually a great supplement line, but it's made overseas.
Uh-huh.
7 members of LAPD tested positive for steroids. All of them swore that they had never taken a steroid in their life. So through a little bit of research, they found out that the only thing they had in common was taking this one supplement, which was Rich Gaspari XT.
Interesting.
So they pulled it, and they did a mass spectrometer on it, and it had Enertrol in it. Now, Rich Gaspari, he had it manufactured in Taiwan, so, he's not responsible. He gave them the recipe. They didn't follow it. But it just shows how innocent people can get really condemned. And the funniest thing is, once it came out that Rich Gaspari XT, it was actually Anadrol, I'm sorry, but once it came out, it had it in it.
Everybody bought it.
Mass sale. Everybody bought everything.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, just for the record, I don't mind if the police that are covering my butt on the street, they can be out juiced up to the gills as far as I care.
Unless they're beating your butt.
I don't give them a reason to beat my butt.
No, I mean, it's a sad state of affairs because, it basically comes down to what he said, she said, because, there's a lot of innocent fighters that get hammered. Now, and I'm going to throw this out there, and it's going to offend some people, and it's going to make some people mad, but it's my opinion, and it's worth exactly what you're paying for it. Nothing. Vitor Belfort was not a natural athlete. He can say that he was taking supplements, and he was natural, and he did TRT, but anyone who knows the steroid game, anyone knows the supplement game, knows what's going on. So there's certain athletes that are natural, and there's certain athletes that aren't. Do I think John Jones knowingly took steroids to increase his performance? I do not believe that. I really don't. I don't think he needs to.
Well,
it's such a slippery slope, and without having some kind of testing, and without, I think really what the UFC should do is they should test and approve supplements for the fighters. Say, hey, you know what? We tested these 24 supplements, and they're approved for your use.
Yeah, they did mention. They have mentioned that they're looking at getting into the supplement game and kind of taking that out of the equation. Well, Jake. So thank you for calling, Terry. Just really, we got the greatest. Can we say callers yet, or we got the greatest caller on earth for our show?
We do. I
Thank you, Terry.
I know a lot of people have been trying to call in. Thanks, Terry.
Yeah,
those are some great points that he brought up, and it just shows you how dirty the supplement world is, and how it's not profitable to get a label on there. But this is a big chance for the UFC to make millions more dollars and launch their own supplement line. Now
you fought, Jake, as with your fighter hat on. What are your thoughts of the UFC getting into the game of doing supplements? Do you, as a fighter, would you be glad, or would you rather take care of what you put into your own body, and you don't want somebody else deciding that for you?
It's a little bit of both, because you always want the freedom to do whatever you want. However, I didn't have the luxury of training at the Performance Institute. Some of those fighters now, they can go train for free. They get their meals prepped. They get their supplements. They get everything. But doing that, everything you're doing is top notch. And if they're in the game and they're giving you the supplements, at least without a shadow of a doubt, you're not going to test positive for anything. So I think I would definitely enjoy that part of it, and it would take the liabilities out of it as well.
Well, yeah, I have mixed opinions on that. So I know, like, and Terry brought up a good point. You know, are the fighters going to get mass spectrometers to go through and test the elemental compounds in these substances? It's just not going to happen. You know, especially on, you know, some of the, maybe Connor could afford to do that, but he's about the only one.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. But, you know, a lot of these fighters, they're just coming up. They're not making great money, and people forget after you're done paying your taxes, 30%'s gone. Your management fee, another 10%'s gone. Your trainers, another 10% gone. You know, your food and nutrition, your upkeep, all the maintenance that comes with it, the chiropractic, the massage, the manipulations, everything that you have to go through. And now you're telling me, like you said, you have to test your supplements. It's just a lot, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
It can get expensive, and unless you're one of those top tier fighters making the great money, it's really tough to do those things, like you said.
Well, what I like I said before, what I like is that this didn't come out. Now you could say that there's a problem with how they did it. Not saying anything about it, because obviously when they test these guys and they find out, they're going to let the UFC know, because so the UFC doesn't give them another fight while they're investigating this. And then you know, and then there's not much transparency. So that is the downside of this. But I do like the fact that we pretty much didn't know, except Sean O'Malley came out and he let people know. It may be one of the other fighters, but that was up to the fighter. The USADA was not releasing that. So
Sure.
I do like the fact that this was taken care of. It's released. It's tainted supplements. It's not, oh, so-and-so is a dirty cheater for 6 months, and then at the end they go, okay, we did our study. It's, you know, trace amounts, you know, conducive to tainted supplements. So I do like that.
I mean, yeah, I do too. And the truth is, in this day and age, with all the advancements and they have in testing, I don't think a lot of fighters are trying to get away with anything. They're just in fear, because if you look at TJ, 2 years away, 2 years, zero income, all your endorsements gone. You know, your brand gets beat up in general. That's a tough pill to swallow. Yeah. So is it worth trying to get that little competitive advantage and maybe test positive?
Oh, we got another call coming in here. MMA Weekly, the lowdown. Who do we got?
Pancho.
Pancho?
Pancho.
This is Pancho.
Hey, Pancho. Pancho, where are you from?
Las Vegas.
All right. Well, you heard obviously about the news about the four fighters tested positive, but the trace amounts being suggestive of tainted supplements. What are your thoughts on the matter?
Well, I'm always concerned with fighters that take tainted supplements, because there's a tainted supplements list. And if they're taking something that's already on the list, then they shouldn't be rewarded for taking the supplement, because they could have just looked on the list. USADA has a list of tainted supplements; they could just look at it. Then also, I always wonder, are they taking the tainted supplement as a red herring to cover up maybe some of the other things they're doing?
Yeah, and Jake, you brought that up earlier. But I think in this case with Austrian, Austrian's not going to mask anything, because that is the villain, and if they find it, you know, you're in trouble. But I hear what you're saying, but I also think there's a problem with just the supplement industry in general, with it being unregulated, and the fact that they could put out a list. But if they're saving some money and doing their having their product put together in China or anywhere that just is unregulated and doesn't go through the process and clean the bins, things can get contaminated. no matter what list.
Oh, no doubt about it. The industry is certainly problematic. If they're buying commercial supplements at a GNC or a similar supplement store, you'd think that the supplement store would identify the products that are on the hot list. When you go into the store, if they're having them made, then there's probably not much you can do. But if it's certainly on a list, if it's on a list of a known tainted supplement and you take it, then that's kind of willful ignorance, isn't it?
Oh yeah. If it's on a list and you take it, I don't know if that was the case here. I didn't see any release of what it was that they took and whether or not what they took of these 4 fighters was on a list. Did you see anything about that, Jake?
I did not.
No. So,
but again, this is a breaking story, so I haven't had a tremendous amount of time to really dig in.
The supplement industry has an incentive to take their supplements because they want their supplements to work. So, I've heard of supplement companies putting a lot of sugar into their supplements, their pre-workout supplements, because then you get that sugar rush before you work out, and you think, wow, this stuff works really good, and really all it is sugar.
Yeah.
So they want their products to work. They want you to feel something, so you'll want to use the product, so they're motivated that way. Same thing if you want long-term gains. There's a lot of motivation in the industry to make their product work, and there's also a lot of motivation in the industry to cut corners, so your cost of the product is a lot lower, and you can create competitive pricing. So I think the industry is screaming for regulation, but I think at some point the fighters can spend $100 and have the supplements tested to see if they are hot.
One last thing before we let you go, Pancho. What are your thoughts on the UFC making their own product line and saying to the fighters, you can't take anything else. You got to take our product here?
I think that adds fuel to the fire to the antitrust suit. So now you're saying, okay, fighters, you can use our product. You have to use our products, or else you're taking a risk. So I think it's, again, a part of the UFC overreaching and trying to take control of the entire industry.
Ah, very interesting. Yeah, yes. I didn't think of that angle. I love it. Thank you, Pancho, for calling.
It sounds like an illegal tying arrangement to me under the antitrust laws.
And you, my friend, sound like a lawyer.
Oh, no, don't be ridiculous.
All right. Thanks for...
The lawyers are despicable cats.
Thanks for calling in, Pancho.
Thanks, Pancho.
All right.
Pleasure.
Boy, I tell you, that's some interesting insight there. And just for the record, I've seen it personally, and I'm not going to say through who, sugar being placed in certain cans of supplements.
Sugar?
Sugar.
So I guess I didn't understand.
It's an easy filler. It's cheap. When you're looking to buy really good products,
but you're not going to get good result from sugar, right?
Yeah, but a lot of times supplements are a placebo. I mean, we've seen.
Okay, so I see.
Give sugar pills, and unless
Okay, so it's not going to help them grow muscle, but the sugar will make them feel euphoric of sorts, and they feel good.
You might get in there and work out harder and gain more muscle from that. I mean, who knows? I mean, true athletes know, and they know what they're putting in, and they can gauge their results. But the normal Joe, you're right. You get a little sugar rush. You get in there, you train harder. All of a sudden you feel great, and it's the best supplement you've ever taken, and it's loaded with sugar.
Well, all right. Well, guys, we got this show in the can. We appreciate everybody for calling in and participating. This has been fun. It's been an experience, and hopefully next time it'll be a happier thing to talk about instead of fighters being on something. I'm Scott Peterson, my cohort Jake Hatton. We will see you later on the Lowdown.